Hi guys, so I wanted to come on here and talk about the All Afrikaans Tertiary institution that is currently being built by a company called Solidarity. So from the little research that I did, it seems like Solidarity is a trade union and it helps its members in the workplace, and it also has its hand in different sectors and it links those sectors. So like I mentioned before, they mentioned that they're planning to build an all Afrikaans tertiary institution, and as you can imagine, a lot of people were heated about this topic. A lot of people, guys, with some feeling like, okay, so they're trying to shout out the black child, you know. But I'm going to tell you reasons why I actually agree with this initiative. So the main argument that people were pushing out is that by them choosing Afrikaans only, it means that they explicitly don't want black people. And in response to that, I say no, that's not necessarily true, because Afrikaans is a language that is spoken within South Africa by many different types of people. Black people speak Afrikaans, colored people speak Afrikaans, and I'm pretty sure there's a small percentage of Indian people who speak Afrikaans. So it's not necessarily saying to no, we don't want black people, because we have people like Ilana Africa. She is black, she's dark-skinned, she's a dark-skinned black woman, but she can speak Afrikaans fluently. So she would definitely be accepted in that university, you know. It's more about pushing the language and not necessarily saying we don't want black people. So I feel like some people took that personally and felt like, oh, okay, since I'm not speaking Afrikaans, then they don't want me, so it means they don't want all black people. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. Another thing is, the reason why this university came into place in the first place is that, you know that they recently ruled that University of Pretoria, UNISA, and University of Stellenbosch should stick to English so that everyone can feel welcomed. So when they made that decision, that kind of made the Afrikaans community feel like, okay, but we also don't know how to speak English that well, because I've met some Afrikaans people who really don't know how to speak English, like they struggle. So there is that demographic within South Africa that explicitly speaks only Afrikaans, and they should also have an opportunity to go to a university where they can attend a lecture in Afrikaans. Another thing that I found quite interesting is that the money that's going to build this university is strictly from donations. That means the Afrikaans community have come together and said, you know what, let's build a university where our children can go and still be taught in our language. And instead of crying to the government, they cried to each other and said, guys, let's hlanganisa our money and build this thing. That is something black people in this country will never do. I'm sorry, I know that sounds a little harsh, but from how I've seen black people treat each other, we've got a long way to go before we can do something like this. This was through unity. White people stick together. You hardly see white people fighting. If they do, it's probably behind closed doors. White people stick together. And this is just another example of it. And black people are now getting hurt feelings where nothing was stopping us from sticking together and starting our own Zulu institution, Xhosa institution, Pedi institution, Tsonga institution. Nothing was stopping us. Black people have money. If you go into black people's houses and you see the type of stuff that they spend their money on, you'll see that black people have money. They just don't know how to use their money in a way that's going to better their own race. And I'm glad that this Afrikaans university is happening so that black people can look at themselves and be like, if we wait for these white people to save us, they never will. We need to save ourselves. Instead of being united, we have stories of xenophobia. Stories of gender-based violence, which is mostly affecting black women. Those are the things that black people are focused on. Fighting each other and not helping each other. So a lot needs to be done within the black community to bring us closer to each other before we can stop pointing fingers at Solidarity for building an all Afrikaans university. And also, black people need to stop waiting for the government to save them. The government doesn't care about the people. If it did, then people would not be suffering. So take that and use that to better yourself for yourself without waiting for the government to send you money. With all that said, however, I definitely do feel like the government should look into building at least one African language-led university in each province. So in KZN, the dominant language is Zulu, so have an all Zulu institution. in Western Cape, it's mainly Xhosa, so have a Xhosa institution. In Limpopo, it's mostly vendor, so have one vendor institution. I feel like that is something that should be done by the government, to build at least one African language university in each province. That is something that's going to help that child who is really intelligent but just doesn't know English. Do you know how many children have failed just because they didn't understand the language and not because they didn't understand the subject? Like, what if the AIDS cure is sitting in some home in Matatiele, but that child only speaks Xhosa and doesn't have access to an English medium school? What happens? Does that mean that the cure for HIV must die with that child? Or does that mean that we should build institutions that will allow for people to come in with whatever language they speak and feel comfortable enough to finish their schooling within that language? So I feel like the government needs to use this to rethink the education sector and be like, okay, cool. If they're going to do it, let's do it for our people as well. Let's build a Xhosa University, Zulu University, Tsonga University, etc. So those are my views. Please share yours down below. Thanks.